Hello, this is Gareth from the iMoot team. It is my great pleasure to introduce Chris Cormack, who's going to talk about what if software actually worked together and interoperability and all lovely words like that. So thank you for your time and for putting this presentation together. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks for the introduction, and thanks everybody for hanging around for the extra 5 minutes. So I'm going to just start off with a little bit about who I am. I don't have my webcam on because in a fit of paranoia about a year ago, I compiled a new kernel and took all the drivers out for the webcam because there was too many stories of people turning on webcams without people knowing that their webcam had been turned on. So then when I went to use it, I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to compile a new kernel. So I just didn't bother. So you can make do with a picture of me when I was 2 being held by one of my uncles instead. So my name's Chris Cormack. I'm of Māori descent. I'm from, I live in Wellington, New Zealand, but my two iwi, my 2 tribes are from the bottom of the South Island, if you know New Zealand at all, right down the bottom. I work on, for most of my working life, I've worked on a project called Kohai, which is a library software, a library management system. I'm currently the documentation maintainer for the next version, which will be released in November. I work at Catalyst. You might know Christina, who works at Catalyst, and if you who on the Mahara project, and there's a bunch of Moodle developers as well. So on the floor I sit on, there's the library team I'm on, then there's the Mahara team, and then there's the Moodle team. So we sit kind of next to each other, and those are kind of the 3 pieces of software that I'm going to talk about. You can find me on Twitter under Ranginui, that's my middle name, and my email address there as well, if you want to tell me all the things I missed out in this presentation. So I'm going to talk about Moodle, obviously. I'm not going to introduce that to you. I'm sure that everyone here probably knows more about it than I do. I'm a Moodle user, not a Moodle developer or deployer or content creator. But the other pieces of software I'm going to talk about working with Moodle are Mahara, which some of you may have heard of. It's an e-portfolio system, so a way of tracking your learning. Kind of goes hand in hand with a learning management system. Once you've learned something, you kind of want to be able to prove that you've learned that. So and Mahara lets you build a CV as you go, lets you build like a journal. It's kind of like a little bit like Facebook, but for your learning journey, I guess. Here in New Zealand, there's a site called myportfolio.school.nz, which all schools in New Zealand can use, so kids can have an e-portfolio from when they start school, and it follows them all the way through to when they finish university. And then you have a really good record of all the stuff you've worked on. So yeah, that makes sense to kind of have that working with Moodle, and there's already been lots of work done around that using things like Leap 2 and the new LTI stuff and those kind of things. But what I'm interested in, probably a little bit more because it's the project I work on, is Kohai, which, as I said, is a library management system. It's been in existence since 1999, so it's a fairly old open source project in the scheme of things. And pretty much any organization that has a teaching mandate or a learning mandate will need or have a library, so they will be running a piece of library management software or an integrated library system, they often get called, as well. So, and it would make sense, to me at least, to have those 3 pieces and maybe more working together to give a better seamless experience for the students and the teachers. So that's the kohai-community.org. I should have put that on that slide. Is the website for let me just type that in, for Kohai itself. If you want to have a look at the project. I've just grabbed a few slides showing kind of what Kohai looks like in production. This is Rennes University in Paris, in Rennes funnily enough. It's in France. That is their Kohai. They're pulling results over here out of their physical collection. Over here is out of, I think, EBSCO. One of these is Serial Solutions or LexisNexis or those kind of things. So pretty much everyone will have bumped into a library management system at one point in their life. If you go into a public library and you jump on one of the kiosks and search for stuff, you're using one there. So, and then the staff will use the same system but a different interface to issue the item to you and return it and those kind of things. Yeah. People still use LexisNexis. They still have massively big stands at library conferences. Library information stuff kind of lags a little bit behind because it's always been quite siloed. So that's kind of the point of breaking this silo stuff. And yes, they are still expensive. So, and then this is kind of the detail page where you get a bit more and you can reserve an item and those kind of things. So that's a brief introduction to Kohai. I'm not going to talk too much about that. What I'm going to talk a bit more about is why I think these three pieces at least would be good to integrate together. So imagine you have a course in Moodle. You have some required reading that the students should be doing. It would be really nice if you could go into, say, Kohai or another library management system, select the resources that you want, highlight them in some kind of way, and push that straight through to your course so that when the students come in, all that bibliographic information is pulled out of Kohai. You don't have to re-enter the title, the author, ISB, all that kind of stuff. It just pulls straight out. They can click on those kind of things. If they're logged in with single sign-on, they can place a reserve on that resource right then and there from their course page, or even if it's an electronic one, get it from there without having to go to another system to do it. And say that perhaps one of their requirements was to review a piece of literature, say they're doing English literature or French literature or something, and one of the requirements is to review it. It would be really neat if when they review it, that review can be saved in Mahara, linked into the Moodle course that needs it, and pushed through to Kohai to be attached as a review on the bibliographic record that goes with the piece of literature they're reviewing. So I can see there's a few kind of neat things that I think you could do to help. And Kohai allows tagging, so it allows people to, so you have your taxonomy that the librarians set up, but then you also have what they often call folksonomy, like tagging that the users can set. So it'd be neat to be able to tag things and pull those things through to Moodle or Mahara, or if you have done your thesis, to push that through into the library management system, and then you can pull that straight into your e-portfolio or those kind of things. So that's kind of the why. I hope I've covered that enough. Feel free to, if I'm going too fast or you think I'm leaving things out, just type stuff in the chat and I'll try and answer it if I can. So that's kind of the why. I think that's mostly kind of explanatory. I think that most people can see that why having those work together would be good. Now I'm going to kind of move on to the how, which is probably a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to talk about here is it's another open source project called Folio, which is about a year old now. It was started by a company called EBSCO, which you may have heard of. They're a massive company, but EBSCO Information Services is one of their divisions, and their main thing they do is a product called EBSCO Discovery Service. It's basically content aggregation. So they have databases, journal articles, all sorts of things. They aggregate these together. They deal with the publishers, work out the licensing requirements, all those kind of things that are a pain to do, aggregate the content, and then provide that mostly to libraries, but also to other organizations as well. So they've had this this product, EDS, they call it, for a long time. Normally, traditionally, what would happen would you'd go to you'd take your, what they call the OPAC, or the public interface of your library system, and they'd put this discovery service in front of it, and it would search the library system and then all their journal articles and these kind of things as well. Another company, ProQuest, who own lots of things now. They own Ex Libris, who make a library system, and they own Serial Solutions, who do content and stuff. They have this whole stack now, and that was really cutting into the market share of EBSCO. So EBSCO decided to start this project called Folio, which is to try and build a platform where you can integrate disparate or different pieces of software together and to create a kind of a seamless platform, a seamless experience. So rather than trying to go the full vertical market kind of thing that ProQuest have done, they've decided to do this one and to make it, it's under the, I forget, it's MIT license, I think. It's either MIT or Apache. It's one of the permissive, not free software licenses, but it's still open source. Sorry, permissive, not copyleft. So yeah, they've decided to start this project. It's well underway, and what really excites me is that basically, if we look at, we can get to the next slide. The layer that excites me is this kind of layer down here, which is the API and message bus. So traditionally, when you do interoperability stuff, so say between these three products, Moodle, Mahara, and Kohai, we would have to connect Mahara to Kohai, Kohai to Moodle, Moodle to Kohai. So we've got, four connects? Or three connections. And then if we added in, say, a student management service, then we'd have to do Kohai to the student management service, Moodle to the student management service, Mahara to the Moodle student management service. And each piece you add in, you get all these more connections, right? So there's more points of fail, there's more complexity. It just becomes hard fast, especially when you add in proprietary software like financial systems with ever-changing APIs and these kind of things. So what kind of excited me about Folio is this opportunity around this message bus for us to perhaps build hooks into that, put things on the bus, and then other systems pull them off. So I don't know people's backgrounds, so I don't know. I've got a computer science background, so when I say bus, I have an idea what I have in my head. I don't know what other people's technical backgrounds are, so forgive me if I am talking down to you, but I'm going to just skip to this slide here and say, think of that OCAP layer, think of the bus layer as actual physical bus. You put things on the bus, well, people get on the bus, and they get off at other stops, and the bus goes, imagine it being a loop, it goes round and round and round. So so say you're getting on at home and you're getting off at the bank. The bank doesn't know where you got on. It just knows that you're getting off there, and it deals with that point there. So the bank doesn't need to know how to talk to your house. It just needs to know how to talk to your bus. I'm stretching this analogy quite far, but the point is that the system, you put things on the bus, they go around. Yeah, a universal serial bus. Yeah, there you go. And so that's kind of the idea with this system, and this is why it's kind of seems quite exciting to me. And I've started doing some work on it. I didn't get as much done as I want. I'm hoping to show you more of it actually working, but maybe next iMoot, I can actually show this in production or something that would be really cool. But if we just jump back one slide, so Folio, because they're basically starting from libraries, that pretty much everything down here is all library functionality. But then when we look over here, they've already thought about that, having a learning management system hooking into this would be good as well. And then things like student outcome metrics, which you could use with the smart, what's it called? I forget it, smart something that might have implemented. But yeah, that kind of tracking progress students, institutional repositories, the D spaces, the Islandora, those kind of things, alfrescos, and linked data and those kind of stuff. So they've already kind of started to think about what else could hook into this. And so I've kind of covered this already, is that the neat thing, if we can do it with Folio rather than having to build all these things ourselves. No, we're not really just limited to library stuff here with Folio. Folio is pretty much that if we're looking at it at the bus layer where the APIs and stuff sit rather than the application layer, we can put things on the bus and pull them off. Other things can pull them off, and we don't really need to know. We don't really care what other things are pulling them off or what even's putting them on. So instead of, like I said before, instead of Kohai hooking to Moodle and then Kohai hooking to Mahara and then Mahara hooking to Moodle, Kohai talks to Folio, Moodle talks to Folio, Mahara talks to Folio. And that means that for open source, it's not quite as big an issue. Like building a connector between Moodle and Kohai, we've already done some work on that. You can search Kohai resources from in Moodle and vice versa. And Mahara and Moodle play pretty well together already. But it gets a lot harder fast when you get proprietary software into the mix. Say if a school was using Blackboard, or they had a mind your own business for the financial management, or some kind of student management system that was bespoke, or those kind of things. Instead of having to build a connector from Kohai and Moodle and Mahara to this financial system or the student management system, we just need to get them to build a connector to Folio, and we've already got our connectors to that. So I'm talking in kind of the ideal world, and like I said, the layer exists, and I've got kind of a tiny proof of concept, but this is kind of like, wouldn't it be good if we could do this kind of thing? The idea with Folio is because it is MIT licensed, anyone can run up one, but EBSCO are going to be doing things like, well, I don't know what other companies, but companies I'm hoping will be starting to offer things like Folio as a service. So you don't need to run your own Folio instance. You could connect to it in the cloud and put things into a Folio instance and get them back out. And exactly like Maureen said, so you put something from your Moodle onto Folio and you get it back with Mahara, and vice versa. And so they just need, so there's underneath that bus layer is a storage layer, and so things can persist if you want them to, or you can just put them on there and pull them straight back kind of off. So what Mahara can do is it can ask, I need the student's Moodle record, and then that goes through Folio, and Folio asks Moodle, I need the student record, and it comes back down here and then back out to Mahara, those kind of things. So the bit that I've kind of got slightly working now is Kohai putting and pulling things off. And then I have Kibana, which is a dashboardy type software that works with Elastic, displaying that kind of information for me. So yeah, what I'm thinking that you could do is on top of having this bus that allows you to connect integration things together and having like a single integration point rather than multiple integration points, that does give us an opportunity potentially to build some apps that talk to Folio as well, that don't need to know really where the start is coming from. They don't really need to know how Moodle works internally. They don't need to know how Mahara works. They don't need to know how kind of anything works. They could ask for this set of data, and it will hand it back out to them, and they display it however they want. So in theory, people should be able to build other things that can talk to Moodle or to Kohai or whatever via Folio. That's kind of their end point where they want to go. And I could share one of the things hardest with working with Kohai is that every library will be either it'll be a big enough, like a public library, that will have its own finance department, or it'll be part of an organisation like a university which has a finance department, or it'll be part of a corporation like Deloitte or whatever, which again has its finance department. And you end up having to build these connectors to these systems again and again and again, because every version does something differently. They don't really have APIs. They're a big black box. But it'd be nicer if a big company like EBSCO or big universities could put the pressure that, say, an open source project like Kohai certainly can't. Maybe Moodle's big enough that could put the pressure on these financial systems to build these connectors. But I think if you said, look, you only have to build one to Folio rather than one to each of these different systems, it'd be much more likely to get done. Something else that would be really useful for libraries is a request tracker, and rather than integrating that into Kohai, pushing that through Folio. Single sign-on would be, it can support OAuth or SAML, so you could use that. You can either use Folio as your IDP, your identity provider, or you could use any of the systems connected to Folio. So you could say, okay, Moodle is the identity provider, or the student management system is the identity provider. When one of these other systems gets a login, they ask via Folio, is this person logged in? Do they exist? Yes, no, whatever, and log them in that way. So I feel like that's probably enough kind of rambling. Like I said, it's quite high level at the moment, and I'd hope to get more done, but life gets in the way. But definitely by next time, I should have something working. I have to present at a library conference in February this working, so I have a deadline. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll hopefully see that by February. I'm willing to take any kind of questions you like. Hopefully that was in some way enlightening. It's always hard, I find, when you're doing it the second time, because I couldn't remember if I'd said something this time or I said it yesterday. So hopefully I covered everything and didn't skip a big chunk out. And yes, Justin, you would be able to pull stuff from data and Moodle into your Serium, hopefully. Yeah, the website is just folio.org as well. So, yes, just Gareth, Folio does have its own internal database structure and those kind of things. If you look at the folio.org website, you can find this PDF, and then underneath this PDF is a whole lot more layer, a whole lot more detail, I should say. And they also, all of their code is in GitHub with quite good read and reads. It's developed by a company called Annexdata, which I don't know if you've heard of. They started in Denmark, but they're kind of all around the world now, and they do open source software development. And so they're quite good at documenting around their code and stuff. So if you can see here, there's a key value store if you want to use a key value store. There's a SQLDB if you want to use that, doc store, those kind of things. Yeah, it's an ambitious task, and I'm glad that someone else is building it rather than me. And I'm happy to use it if they can get it to work. And what I've seen so far is it's working quite well. The connectors that they already have, because this has started primarily for a kind of libraries to start with, they have most of these first connectors around here, acquisitions, cataloging ones here. So they've talked to a few of the proprietary library system vendors. Cersei Dynex you might have heard of, or you might not have. And a few other ones have built connectors from their system into here. And Kohai has a connector for the circulation data at the moment. So we can just basically all that does now at the moment is push data in for logging purposes, because one thing, even if the only thing you do is use this as kind of a log aggregator or a transaction aggregator, it's a really good way of seeing actual following someone's progression through different apps, or seeing an actual good overview of what happens on your systems in the day. Yeah, Catalyst would definitely be interested, I'm sure, in building a Mahara connector. Like I said, I work at Catalyst and I sit right next to the Mahara team. So, and because I've already pitched that I will be showing Moodle, Mahara, and Kohai working together at the Australian Library it's called VALA. It's the big Australian academic libraries conference in February. I pitched a talk saying that I'll have it going, so I'm hoping I'll build it. Otherwise, I'll have to have a go, dredge up my 1997 PHP and write one myself. But like I said, it's quite well documented. I'd really hope that that it becomes useful. I don't think this will replace LTI and the other kind of interoperability and the standard ways of building interoperability as well, because I don't think that Folio is going to be used by every organization. I think it's mostly going to be medium to large academic organizations that already use EBSCO's EDS. But that's quite a lot. That's thousands and thousands of universities and polytechnics around the world. So, and it may be easy enough to run up that people start just using that as their generic kind of connector as well. Is there any more questions? At least I didn't have a dog and cat fight in the middle of this one, which happened yesterday. Yeah, the joys of presenting from your house. I managed to get the kids to be quiet, but one of them had dropped a piece of pizza on the floor, and so the dog and the cat had a massive fight over who got to eat the pizza. So it's quite hard to try and present and separate the two of them at the same time. Yeah, the replay's there. I think it's probably about 15 minutes into the talk or something. I haven't listened to it myself. I find it really hard to listen to myself talk. I always think, oh my God, do I really sound like that? That's true. At least the kids weren't fighting as well. And I did get a badge for it, so that was pretty cool.
Okay, Chris, thank you. So on behalf of the iMoot, thank you for really informative. Looking forward to this sort of really coming forward and developing even further, and certainly makes a star and reduces all the connections you have to set up, and even from an administrative point of view. So thank you once again from myself and behalf of the iMoot team for putting your presentation together and for your time.
Thank you all for listening.